Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's retro review is Cults of Prax for RuneQuest 2nd edition by Chaosium. Okay, first a bit of history. Originally released in 1979, Cults of Prax is a 112-page softback supplement that details 15 cults from the Prax area of Glorantha, namely the barbarian gods and invader deities, which I'll be covering in this video, and the lightbringers and non-human deities in a second video. It was available in 3 editions. The original version with Steve Swenston's baboon cover was replaced by a variant with a different cover in 1980, and then this version printed under license from Games Workshop in 1982 on A4 size paper. The Games Workshop version changed Appendix L to N and removed all references to Worm's Footnotes, The Wild Hunt and the Alarms and Excursions, while adding White Dwarf magazine. It also didn't include the list of planned publications. The Games Workshop version is easily recognisable by this yellow band with RuneQuest printed on it across the top of the cover. Okay, to the cover. This simple map illustration by William Church is one of my all-time favourites. The combination of the font, the colours and the sheer beautiful simplicity of it makes it iconic in my eyes. Okay, to the inside. The book covers the barbarian gods Daka Fal, Stormbull, Waha and Eiritha, the invader deities Humakt, the Seven Mothers Pavis and Yelmalio, the Lightbringers, Isaris, Shalana Arroy, Lankormai and Orlanth, and the non-human gods, Kaigalitor, Zoraxaran and Aldrya. Firstly, we have an introduction by Steve Perrin and Greg Stafford that talks about the purpose of the book, about what the cults serve on Glorantha, and to illustrate their interrelationships in a complex and cohesive society, and what you should reasonably expect when meeting and interacting with worshippers. It then goes on to talk about the Gloranthan calendar. Glorantha is around 1600 years old. This is when the sun god Yelm rose in the east and the new god Time was born. Dates are written with the ST suffix, which stands for Solara Tempora. All time is measured since the first sunrise. Time is the most powerful of all the gods of the New Age. For a further explanation of how time works in Glorantha, please see my review of Cults of Terror. Following this, we have a sample cult. This gives a breakdown of how the cults in the book are presented. It covers the mythos and history, the nature of the cult, the organisation, lay membership, initiate membership, rune lord membership and rune priesthood, subservient cults and associated cults. We also have a guideline on devising rune spells. In a similar manner to Cults of Terror, we have the cult of the book encountered in a story format that follows Baturian Varos, a golden tongue worshipper of Isaris. They're really well written and give a good indication of what players should expect to see. It also gives us a timeline of when he encounters each cult and which cult it is, as well as a map showing the route he followed on his travels in Prax. First up are the barbarian gods. It talks about how, in the Golden Age, Prax was a rich and verdant land that was struck barren and defiled by invasions and death. The sun fell from the sky and trolls took over the land, with spirits lurking in every corner and chaos creatures stalking everyone, followed by the devil, Wakboth. Stormbull bravely fought Wakboth, ultimately destroying it, but being left gravely wounded. In the aftermath of Wakboth's defeat, the land was shattered and the people that remained had real difficulty living, beset by spirits and demons and the dead walking among them. Daka Fal then walked the world and separated the living from the dead. Waha was born and he calmed the world, making the earth still and taming the wildfire god Oakfed. He dug a great canal and ordered it to digest the foul corpse of Wakboth. He freed the protectresses and the founders and taught the people the skills that would enable them to live. He also taught men the peaceful cut, which would send an animal spirit to the mother of beasts when they were butchered. Finally, he taught men weapons work so they could protect their herd. He established the customs of the tribes and taught them how to survive. Eiritha was known before the darkness, and it was only upon Waha liberating her daughters that she could be worshipped. The women of the tribes learned magic from the temple at the Paps in Prax. They are the caretakers of animals. The main tribes of Prax are the animal nomads, of which there are 5 large nations: Impala, Bison, High Llama, Sable and Morocanth, as well as minor tribes associated with the likes of Rhino, Zebra and Wild Bull, and there are cow herds. The nomad's survival is entirely dependent on cattle, as they use them for almost everything in everyday living. Each of the gods fulfills a part of a nomad life. The first god is Daka Fal, who is associated with the runes of man and spirit. There are no known tales of Daka Fal before the darkness, and he is connected with Grandfather Mortal. After the darkness, he taught the survivors how to separate the living from the dead and the sacred burial rites to prevent the dead from harassing the living, as well as spells that allow communication with those from the other side. Daka Fal was named by the gods to be the judge of the dead. His cult ensures the living will not be bothered by the dead and is widespread among the tribes of Prax. Daka Fal is a fierce opponent of chaos, as this brings death into the world. There's no official cult organisation, although having a priest of Daka Fal in the family does bring a certain amount of prestige. Most tribes will have 1 or 2 high priests, who are more likely to be enemies than co-workers. The cult has no centre of worship, although each priest knows how to create a centre of power for their ceremonies that is a gateway for spirits. It is known as an Axis Mundi. All living people can become a lay worshipper of Daka Fal, including humanoids, although it offers no mundane benefits. Initiates of the cult must disavow all previous cult connections, and they may obtain the 1-point rune magic spell Summon Ancestor. The cult has no formal rune lords, although those fulfilling the requirements will get the benefits. Rune priests are the core of the cult, and they are in the unique position of being able to summon their ancestors instead of an established priest to be their examiner. They get access to a number of rune spells that will aid them in their work, such as Free Ghost, Summon Specific Ancestor, and Summon Spirit Teacher. They can also allow one of their ancestors to occupy the body of one of their descendants with the Incarnate Ancestor spell, and they also have a non-reusable Resurrection spell. They're associated with the cults of Grandfather Mortal and Fleshman, from whom they get the Spirit Block spell. Next up is Stormbull. Associated with the runes of Death, Storm/Air and Beast, and being one of the oldest manifestations of Humakt, Stormbull is bestial in nature, one of raw, unthinking strength that is guided by instinct and the sensitivities of a god. Inalda gave him her daughter Eiritha as his wife, and they worked together to create their world. During the Greater Dark, Stormbull introduced death to his people when he slew the chaos god Ragnaglar, but he could not stop the devastation of the land by Wakboth. The devil had slain many gods before coming to Prax. Stormbull stood firm and fought Wakboth with strength and courage. Wakboth was strong and bested Stormbull. Eiritha lent him all of her power, though the region lay blasted and empty afterwards, and from the edge of the world a hurtling section of the exploded spike struck Wakboth, pinning him beneath immeasurable tons of petrified lore. This effort nearly killed Stormbull, who could not finish off the devil. Instead, he dragged himself off to die in the Storm Hills. There, Shalana Arroy found him and healed him. Stormbull still lives in the Storm Hills and never comes to the Barren Plains, although his power is always present. The worship of Stormbull extends far outside of Prax, and he has a few notable heroes in his cult, such as Karsh, a general for the Praxian armies during the destruction of the Empire of the Wormfriends, and Valtash Walker, who is remembered by the Trolls as a friend and brew killer. After death, worshippers of Stormbull join him in a glorious life of struggle in the eternal battle, and Stormbull is known to personally pursue the souls of his worshippers who've been slain by chaos, even to the pit of entropy beyond the cosmos. The funeral rites of the cult involve killing a favourite beast of the dead warrior without the peaceful cut to ensure that it will accompany the dead warrior in spirit everywhere. The cult's purpose is to prevent the rise of the devil or any associated form of chaos. Socially, they're totally unacceptable, having a total disregard for any tribal taboos or manners, even occasionally murdering without consequence. Normal people consider worshippers of Stormbull to be barely human brutes who are deranged and dangerous. They are, of course, correct. The discomfort that people must endure in peacetime pays off entirely in times of war, as their fearlessness when fighting chaos makes them incredibly respected. They have no formal structure beyond that of the High Priest, and when gathering, the most heroic, famous or powerful will be the leader by default. The cult generally has between 5 and 8 High Priests wandering the plains of Prax, and they are known as Bull's Heads, and they serve as a centre of information and judgment, and they are generally served by 4 priests. The cult's centres of worship are the places in Prax where Stormbull perform mythical deeds, such as the Block, the Dead Place, and the Eternal Battle. Lay membership of the cult requires that the candidate be untouched by chaos and armed with magical weapons and be willing to follow their superiors' orders. The only races that are not allowed are Brews, Giants, Ogres, and other chaos-tainted creatures. The cult can teach members a number of skills that aid them in fighting chaos, such as Spot Hidden and Spot Trap, as well as all battle magic. Upon becoming an initiate, a special skill becomes available, Sense Chaos. This allows them to sense the presence of chaos in living and inanimate things, giving them a vague sense of unease. Rune Lords are known as Khans and are the Berserker Masters of Prax, chaos killing machines. They owe their obedience only to their god. They may only marry priestesses of Eiritha and must attack chaos if they sense it nearby. They are allowed freedom of all of Prax. Rune priests are oriented towards combat. They gain the rune spells Defend Against Chaos and Face Chaos. Their spirit of reprisal is One Ear, who attacks those that leave the cult. They're associated with Waha, who they gain the Peaceful Cut and Summon Spirit of Law from, Shalana Arroy, who they gain the incredibly handy Cure Chaos wound, Eiritha, who they gain Understand Beast Speech, and fellow chaos-hating god and friend Zaraxaran, who they gain the Berserker spell from. Additionally, they gain the powerful Earth Power spell from Inalda. Waha is next. The son of Stormbull and Eiritha, Waha was born at the end of the Gods' War after his father had slain Wakboth and long before his mother was hidden in the earth. He taught the tribes how to survive. He freed Eiritha's daughters who were imprisoned by Kaigalitor and returned the goddesses known as the Protectoresses to the world. He taught men the secrets of death and the peaceful cut and warlike blows so that they could defeat their enemies. He fought wildfire and tamed it to be a friend of man and cleansed the desert of the foul corpse of Wakboth. The cult provides the basic way of life to the tribes of Prax and tells them what to do to survive. The hierarchy of Waha's cult understandably has great influence on the tribes. He is the protector of herds and considers all that don't know the peaceful court to be enemies. He hates chaos and will fight it when found. Also, he does not like the Lightbringers but grudgingly honours them, also distrusting horses as they are animals of Yelm and not Eiritha. Each tribe of beast people has its own High Khan, who is the High Priest of Waha for the entire people, and they're only outranked by the Priest of Waha at the Paps, who has precedence over all other priests when in their presence. All children of a tribe, unless otherwise chosen for another cult, are automatically lay members of Waha's cult. They can learn many tribal skills at reduced cost, as well as battle magic. Initiates have to be proven warriors having skill in riding and tribal weapons, and must be willing to sacrifice their lives to protect the herd. They can marry priestesses of Eiritha if they wish to, as well as join war parties and raids. Rune Lords are the takers of life and have a title associated with their tribal animals such as Lama Khan, Impala Khan, etc. All Rune Lords are men and must be proven to be of good character. They can only ever ride their herd beast and can only marry priestesses of Eiritha. Rune priests are a more hierarchical priesthood than magical one. Only those of noble blood may become a rune priest, and they're forbidden from marrying foreign women and are meant to exemplify the virtues of Waha. The cult has a single rune spell, Summon Spirits of Law. If anyone leaves the cult of Waha, they will be visited by Borobo Nightmare, the spirit of reprisal for the cult, who will appear unexpectedly. Waha is associated with Stormbull, who gives the rune spell Defend Against Chaos, Eiritha, who gives Speak to Beast, and Oakfed, the god of wildfire, who gives the Cremate Dead spell. Last of the barbarian gods we have Eiritha. Before the gods' war, she was a contented animal goddess and one of the daughters of Enalda and Hykim, father of beasts. She is associated with the runes of beast and fertility, and she lived in the rich plains of Prax with her daughters. When Stormbull came to Prax, she married him, but their happiness was short-lived. Death came for Eiritha one day, but could not find her. Death had been delayed by a great hero called Arani, one of Stormbull's sons, who paid with his life, and another hero, Tada, who led his people to dig a great pit for Eiritha to hide in the womb of the earth. Death was fooled, but Eiritha could never again walk freely upon Prax. During the Great Darkness, Waha was born, and he salvaged parts of his parents' magic and taught them to the surviving peoples. As neither god could return to the plains, the people started worshipping Eiritha through her daughters, called the Herd Protectresses, and of Waha, who knew the secrets of the founding spirits of the tribes. The worship of Eiritha has spread since time began. She is worshipped in two distinct forms: the Herd Eiritha, for example Sable Eiritha or Impala Eiritha, and at the Paps, where the worship is known as Paps Eiritha. All branches of the cult have no influence amongst the tribes to conform to any form of unity, although they are completely dependent on her for their daily existence. Priestesses of Eiritha are always respected amongst the tribes. Ruling councils will always pay heed to the words of the High Priestess. As with other barbarian gods, she is a hater of chaos, and those who would kill the animals of the herds without knowing the correct prayers to send their spirit back to her. They are not fond of the Lightbringers, seeing them as responsible for the devastation of Prax, but will grudgingly admit to being neutral or friendly. There is no intercult hierarchy, although Paps priestesses are treated with great respect. Each of the 5 major nomad nations has a high priestess who is their respected elder of the nation. The high priestesses of the cult itself is known as the most respected elder, who never leaves the Paps and has absolute rule over the sacred council. All in all, there are 10 priestesses that report directly to the most respected elder, with 5 being the aforementioned major nomad nations and the others of lost, hidden or minor tribes. Additionally, there are some subcults attached to the Paps under Eiritha's control. These are the Father of Independence, the 3-Bean Circus, Ronans, the Good Shepherd, and Aldrya. Amongst the people of Prax, all are assumed to be lay worshippers, although outsiders may join by paying 2 cattle or the equivalent, make a special gift or otherwise satisfy the presiding priestess. Only females can become initiates of the cult, and they can learn the skill Understand Beast Speech and the spell Ignite. Rune Lords are known as Herd Sisters and are required to be highly trained in non-combat survival skills. Rune Priests are again always female, and they gain the rune spells Bless Animal, which increases their fertility, and Speak to Beast. The Spirit of Reprisal is a non-violent one that will follow the usurper and communicate their sins to all worshippers of Eiritha and Waha, who will then give no aid to them. The 3-Bean Circus is an ancient band or family that were known as peaceful worshippers whose power was cast down in the God's War, although they still persistently wander the plains. Eiritha gains the powerful Peace spell from them. Ronans is a son of Enalda, who gives the spell Pathway to the cult, and the Good Shepherd was immortal once and a friend of Eiritha, and the father of many of the protectresses of Prax. He gives the powerful resurrection spell Seal Spirit. There is Aldrya, who gives the rune spells Accelerate Growth and Heal Body, and there is Mahome, the campfire god, who gives the battle magic spell Ignite, and Enalda, who gives Summon Elemental 1, 2 and 3. Lastly, we have a flowchart of the Eirithan genealogy, which includes the primal earth god Gata and Humakt, the primal air god. Following this section, we have the invader deities. They are known by this as they were either introduced into Prax during recorded history, have associated cults in the region, or fill some need of the peoples of the region. Humakt was the first invader, appearing perhaps as early as 35 ST. Pavis was a mortal human who came to Prax to found his city around the year 800 in the Second Age, and Yelmalio was imported into Pavis in the year 875 to help against barbarian raids. The Cult of the Seven Mothers appeared in the area in 1610 when the Lunar Empire invaded Prax to find the route to the sea. Worshippers of these can be found in every nomad clan. First up is Humakt. The brother of both Orlanth and Stormbull, Humakt is the son of Humakt and is associated with the runes of death and truth. When Ermal the Trickster first discovered the first sword called Death, Humakt used it to slay Grandfather Mortal, making him the first deity to die. He let Orlanth borrow Death to slay Yelm in an argument, and since then has disassociated himself with his brother and any connections he has with the air deities. He's the bringer of death to all since time began, and is the god of mercenaries and soldiers, encouraging honour and courage and disliking pointless slaughter. This ensures he always has a presence in the ranks, as his priests act as trainers and chaplains, and his rune lords are sent on perilous quests. In peaceful regions, Humakt is considered a minor cult, whereas the opposite is the case in areas of conflict. Among the tribesmen of Prax, he is considered as having non-relevant skills. The core beliefs of the cult are that Humakt does not believe in maintaining a body which has been separated from its spirit, making death cults that create all manner of undead such as Vivamort, mortal enemies. Zaraxaran is equally an enemy of Humakt due to his enjoyment of massacre. The troll god considers him effeminate and squeamish. There is also a professional rivalry between Humakt and Yelmalio. Humakt's temples are fairly autonomous, being carried along by wherever war breaks out, and they have a fairly rigid infrastructure organised along military lines, with rune lords and high priests being called captain, and 10 priests or lords called centurions. These centurions have up to 10 initiates who they call sergeants. Humakt welcomes all as long as they are warriors who swear to keep discipline, and hold up his ideals of fair play and honourable conduct. There are few brew, scorpion men or ogre members, as they rarely have the required discipline. Lay members must uphold the Humakti code of conduct and can learn combat skills and battle magic from the cult. Initiates of Humakt are known as Sword Brothers, and once accepted must accept a gift and geese from these tables. Some of the gifts require more than one geese due to their power. Sword Brothers are often sought out to be bodyguards due to their ability to sense assassins. Rune Lords are known as a Sword of Humakt and must be highly skilled in multiple weapons, and Rune Priests can learn the rune spells Bind Ghost, Detect Truth, Turn Undead and True Sword, as well as the 2-point spells Morale and Oath, and the 3-point spell of Sever Spirit. The Spirit of Reprisal is a direct extension of Humakt himself, who shatters the sword of any transgressor. Humakt is associated with the cult of Shalana Aroy's son, Aroin. Next we have the Seven Mothers. Associated with the runes of Luna, life/fertility and death, these are the mortals that were a group of dissenters, exiles and priests who met to prepare an incredible ritual, possibly one of the greatest ever performed. In 1220 ST they achieved their goal when they found the shattered pieces of a long broken goddess and reconstructed her into a living entity. This was the Red Goddess. In the year 1247 ST, the Red Goddess attained immortality and honoured those that birthed her. Within 30 years of her apotheosis they had left Glorantha and were immortal. The Seven Mothers were Queen Dizola, a ruler of lands on the Arcos River and a priestess of Arachnosalara. She is known as the Binder Within and is the source of cult healing. There's Jackaleel the Witch, or the Spindle Hag, a former priestess of Zaraxaran who is the source of the Loons of the Pantheon. There's Tilo Nori, or the Young Girl, a girl that was drawn at random from the streets of Terang for the ritual. She is the cupbearer to the Red Goddess and is the source of the Fund for the Poor movement. There's a Ripiontor, or the Brown Man, an outlawed priest of Lankormai. Yanafal Tarnels, an exiled nobleman who became the war god for the Lunar Pantheon. And there is Dan5 Zaran, a bloodthirsty outlaw who was called Bridge for the Seeker, who volunteered for the most dangerous task in the ritual. He holds the position of the gatekeeper for the Pantheon. And finally, there is She Who Waits, a mysterious person who remains unidentified, although it is suspected she was a priestess of the Blue Moon. It's interesting to note that there are many parallels with the Lightbringers. Both had an innocent amongst their ranks, as well as a mysterious member that was unknown. One group sought to restore the sun, the other the moon, and also the Seven Mothers and the Red Goddess are a group of 8, which reflects the 8 phases of the moon. The cult is only around 300 years old and rises and falls with the fortunes of the Lunar Empire. It is considered guardian cult of the borderlands, and its mission is to educate the populace on the Red Goddess. It is a political and magical representation of the lunar religion, often called the occupying cult, with their aim being to set up autonomous client states. They generally like anything that likes the Lunar Empire, including things of chaos, but have plenty of enemies including some of the cults in this book. There is also a mythological enmity between the cults of the air and moon as they fight for the Middle Earth. The cult is strongly tied to Terang, the city where the Red Goddess was born and a cult centre of power, and it's from here that many missionaries are sent to the imperial provinces to increase the lunar influence. The temples generally have a high priestess and 7 chief priestesses, each for one of the subcults. The cult requires very little from lay members, and they may partake of free food at a temple once per day. Initiates must serve an active duty to the temple and normal battle magic can be learned. Also, some rune spells can be bought. Rune Lords are primarily fighters who protect the lands of the Red Goddess. They're not allowed to marry and can never worship another air cult and are generally welcomed to any Rune temple. Rune priests are more commonly titled priestesses and are affected by the cyclical nature of the moon, and their rune spell usage is based on this. They gain some unique spells that allow them to summon loons of various sizes, as well as the Madness and Mind Blast spells. They also gain True Sword, Chaos Gift and Regrow Limb as 2-point spells and Resurrection as a 3-point spell. Unusually, this cult has no spirit of reprisal. It then goes on to discuss in a bit more detail each of the 7 mothers. Jackaleel the Witch is associated with the Blue Moon cult and explores the diverse horrors and solaces in the secrets of darkness. Tilo Nori's cult is fairly undeveloped, and it's usually those that are interested in simple protection and innocence that gravitate towards it. She is revered as the lunar goddess of youth. Dizola is a favourite of nobles and poets and has healing interests. Yennefer Tarnels resembles the cult of Humakt to a large degree, but excludes his hatred of chaos. Iripiontor fulfills the role of the cult of Lancor Mai within the lunar cult, with the exception that his priests may not have beards. Danfive Zarin is a representative of rehabilitation, and criminals that seek refuge gravitate towards it. Eteres is known as a daughter of Isares and as the lunar goddess of trade. There is the Young Elementals, a group of major spirits that were imprisoned outside of time until the coming of the Red Goddess, who are the source of the cult elementals. There is also Yara Aranis, a savage 6-armed goddess and a daughter of the Red Emperor and a barbarian demon that was conceived with the intent of terrorising the horse nomads. It then goes on to discuss the lunar chaos acceptance. The Empire is hated due to its inclusion of chaos within its worship, which is understandable amongst the old gods, as their fight against chaos is the key to their existence. As the Red Goddess was born inside time, she has a different perspective and a different freedom, which is reflected in the lunar religion. The lunar way is to try to understand the chaotic bondage of mindlessness and the void, although this way of thinking is alien to most. The lunars consider this rigidity to be ignorance and imbalance. Abominations such as the Crimson Bat are no more loved by lunar citizens than they are by the Empire's enemies, and it is only the words of the government that these horrors can be controlled that allows them to not live in fear. Disliked everywhere, the lunars are everybody's scapegoat, something that they can accept and move past. The trouble that exists between the air gods and the lunar goddess is deep and permanent. The air gods represent an erratic driving force in the cosmos, and the Red Goddess has tamed this conflict and turned it into a predictable servant, imposing order on the formative and destructive powers. This is reflected in the dominant Peloria. This has had mundane effects on the real world. The weather has warmed noticeably, and the storms that once came southward that bring snow still bring snow, but only for a few months. The ice demons from the wastes of Valand are regularly challenged and beaten by lunar priests, and the cold armies and destructive ice storms have not had an effect for around 150 years. The red moon sits in the sky at all times and emits something called the glow line, which marks the conquered territories of the Lunar Empire. The next deity covered is Pavis, a once mortal hero who appeared around 800 years after time began. Associated with the runes of Earth, Stasis, Harmony and Man, Pavis was a half-elf who studied under the tutoring dragons during the expansion of the Empire of the Worm's Friends. At Dragon Pass he met the dwarf and gained the mastery of stone. He gained fame for animating the great faceless statue of Shadow's dance and bringing it to Prax to defeat Waha in a wrestling match. He gained sovereignty over the area around the River of Cradles, which took his name. At a later time, when Waha was badly wounded during an invasion of Dragon's Pass, Pavis taught Aldrayami healing to the priestesses of the Paps, saving him, which cemented bonds between the nomads of Prax and the city of Pavis. Pavis created an immense city from the body of the faceless statue of Shadow's dance that was never seen again. The introduction of Sundown Temple provided a fighting force for the city, and the cult of Pavis flourished. However, it did not last. A dark troll priest, Gerak Kag, came with a troll army and invaded the city, and the last rune lord of Pavis, Balastor, died during its final defence. Troll magic closed the city for 400 years, and the cult of Pavis kept the non-troll city dwellers alive till the city was reopened during the strange magics of the Dragonewt's dream. The kingdom of Sartar sent colonists, and the high priest of Pavis struck a deal with the high priest of Orland to give the ground and buildings to Pavis and the heir to Orland. The Red Goddess wanted to marry Pavis to add him to her pantheon, though he has resisted thus far. Pavis is a city cult, where the worship is for the founder of the city. It's uniquely friendly with both Mostali and Aldrayami, and often settles disputes between the two. Since the troll invasion, there is no love lost for Kagalitor. Both Waha and Eiritha have good relations with Pavis, though the same can't be said for Stormbull. There's only one temple of Pavis in Pavis, and it has only one high priest, known as the Son of Pavis. Anybody can become a lay member of the cult, even if they worship other gods, swearing to support the city against invasion and to repair the temple. Initiates must have been born in Pavis, or Pavis outside the walls. There are currently no rune lords of Pavis, with most initiates dying at the hands of trolls or other rubble denizens. There is only one rune priest of Pavis currently. They have access to the rune spell City Harmony, which is powerful in that it counteracts fanaticism and demoralises and calms groups of people down. The cult gets the spell Summon Small Sylph from the Orlanth Rex cult, Summon Small Undine from the Zola Fel cult, Summon Small Gnome from Eiritha, Summon Small Salamander from Oakfed, and strangely, Summon Small Shade from Kaigalitor. Aldrya provides the Sun Ripen and Heal Body spell, and from the cult of the dwarf Flintnail we get the support spell. The final deity covered in this section is Yelmalio. Associated with the runes of light and truth, Yelmalio is said to be the son of Yelm, the sun god. He was a leader and fought for his father's cause in the God's War. Sadly, at the Hill of Gold, he was disarmed by Orlanth and ambushed by Zaraxaran, who stole his fire powers. During the Great Darkness, he joined with Lord Elf to fight the approach of chaos. He managed to survive and greeted his father Yelm at the beginning of time. His cult is also called the Sun Dome Temple, as it includes worship of both the sun and the sky, or dome, in one. The cult came to notice him fighting the horse barbarians of the lowlands of Peloria, known then as the Son of the Sun. During the Second Age, the cult fought dwarves everywhere, also leading the fight against the Empire of the Worm Friends. Many heroes were slain during the Dragonkill War of 1100, which also included all the temples in Dragon Pass being destroyed, although it did live on in Prax and Peloria. The cult moved back to Dragon Pass in the Third Age at the House of Sartar's request, restoring a sense of cosmic balance and stabilising the kingdom. The cult exists due to sacred pacts signed in mythical times between Orlanth and Yelm, grudgingly admitting to each other's right to exist. The cult is fairly widespread, usually in communities centred around temples. The cult is a famous source of mercenaries due to the military training it provides. It's hostile towards Zaraxaran due to him stealing Yelmalio's fire powers, and Kaigalitor is hated due to the long fight they put up against the forces of light before chaos came. It has a professional rivalry with the cult of Humakt, although there is no malice in it. Indeed, individual Humakti can be found commanding Sundome spearmen. Humakt builds warriors, the Sundome builds soldiers. The cult is also friendly to elves, but only tolerates the Lightbringers for the aid they gave his father. Temples are headed by a single high priest who has 3 assistants who report to them. The priesthood is open to all except trolls, dwarves and creatures of dark and the underground, and those that join can learn a whole host of military skills. Yelmalio, being the warlike god that he is, approves of those that take the adventuring path, but they must take a gift in geese, which are detailed here and are similar to those of Humakt. They can also learn a special spell called Lantern. Rune Lords must be highly skilled in a host of weapons and may never ride a horse or marry anyone other than the priestess of an earth cult, symbolically reuniting the sun with his mate the earth. They must all own 1,000 lunar gold spear for ceremonial purposes, and male Rune Lords may never disguise themselves as a woman, although the converse is not true for female Rune Lords. Rune priests gain the rune spells Cat's Eye and Cloud Clear, and the spirit of reprisal is the spirit of Yelmalio's mortal son, Monrog, who will drain their rune spells. They're also associated with the ancient heroes Togtave and Kashiel, who taught horseback archery. The cult is associated with Aldrya, who gives the spell Sun Ripen, unsurprisingly his father Yelm, who grants the powerful Sun Spear spell, and Vrimak, the god of birds, who gives the Speak to Bird spell. There are no more than 15 temples throughout southern Peloria, including lunar territory. The cult also has the bother of only dealing in gold wheels, as they despise silver, which doesn't help the spread of the cult, but one they are adamant that they stick to, as the cult has an obligation to use gold as much as possible. That concludes part 1 of this video. Part 2 will continue with the Lightbringers and non-human gods.